Hi, everyone. I'm Nicole Scheidel, Executive Director of Canadian Physicians for Life. And today on CPL's The Pulse, I am joined by Laura Lewis, the Executive Director of Pregnancy Care Canada. I'm so glad you could join us today, Laura.
Thank you, Nicole. It is my great pleasure to be here with you.
So you worked as a family physician for 22 years before becoming the Executive Director of Pregnancy Care Canada. What in your life and practice inspired you to go in this direction?
Yeah, so it was a bit of a big change because for 22 years I worked as a family doctor, and really I loved that work. I got to care for people from the beginning of life until the end of life and everywhere in between. And it was really a privilege to enter that space with people. About halfway through this time, I started to become aware of the challenges involved with an unexpected pregnancy and also the impact of abortion on women. And really, I had not been aware of this prior to. And I realized that I wasn't really asking my patients adequate questions as they tried to wrestle through their decision about their unexpected pregnancy. And I also didn't follow up about the impact of the abortion on them. And around this time, as I started to become aware that maybe I could be doing something more, or that these issues and decisions were so complicated and multi-layered, and that there were many pressures and circumstances that I didn't appreciate and really didn't have time to appreciate. It was at that time that a friend approached me. She had been adopted, and she realized that there needed to be pregnancy care support in our town that would provide the information, support, the space needed for many individuals to truly make an informed pregnancy decision. So I ended up getting involved in helping start a local center, and I saw the tremendous need and value of this place where women would receive accurate medical information, compassionate support, where they were truly allowed to make their own pregnancy decision. And they had the space to really enter into all the things that were difficult for them, and they got the practical help to do so. So long story short, I loved the concept, ended up leaving my medical practice and becoming the Executive Director of Pregnancy Care Canada.
So when you talk about that ongoing journey of yours to start to see the more complex needs, was there any specific story or patient that helped you really identify that need and want to meet it? Like, was there anything did you have a specific aha moment, or was it a series of aha moments?
Yeah, there were quite a few aha moments, and I couldn't put my finger on actually one patient. But honestly, Nicole, when I started to hear the stories about when women started to share their stories with me, it really broke my heart, because I was totally unaware of what they had been going through. And I remember one day this young woman came in, and she wasn't a regular patient of mine. She came in and she started telling me about how she and her boyfriend had gotten pregnant. They were living with her boyfriend's mother, and her boyfriend's mother forced her to have an abortion that she didn't want. And she said, I think about that child every day, and really I didn't feel like I had any other choice but abortion. And that really struck me, that in this time when we champion choice and a woman's right to make her own decision, that there are women who, for various reasons, actually feel like they don't have any other choice but abortion. And that isn't acceptable. I also had a patient who, sort of on a different tangent, but when she was a teenager, she'd gotten pregnant, and it wasn't the greatest circumstances. And she knew that if her parents found out, that they would force her to have an abortion, and she didn't want one. And so she had to actually run away from home and hide. And she hid until abortion wasn't an option, and placed her child for adoption. And she came in one day with this big smile, and she said, I feel like I found a missing piece of a puzzle in my life. And she had reconnected with the baby boy that she had placed for adoption decades earlier.
When I think about the friends of mine who've had abortions, all of them, and all of them that I'm aware of felt coerced. They felt backed into a corner. They felt like they had no other option. And I think that's one of the things that we're missing in the whole debate today is these are complex decisions, and pushing someone into a corner and saying that's your option and you should take it without giving it a second thought really undermines the woman who's going through this really challenging time.
Exactly. And I think it is important because we're trying to say, could we have the social license to exist in our social, in the culture today, that not every woman wants an abortion. And so let us make sure that there are alternatives available, support available, that no one would feel forced into an unwanted abortion. And I believe most Canadians would agree with that, whatever they might view, however they might land on the spectrum of what we call choice. And, but right now, that's not what we're hearing. The noise, the debate, the anger, all of it is just about abortion on demand, no apology, no stigma, and it shouldn't matter. And so then we end up with, and I've met many women who have very unresolved grief from their abortion decision. And they might have felt pressured into it. They might have chosen it at the time, but now in retrospect, they think, you know what, if someone had just been there and said, you can do this, I'm here for you, let's sit down and talk, they feel that they might have made a different decision. And so that complicated grief that can go with a pregnancy loss due to abortion, it's difficult, and often no one wants to talk about it.
So I think that gives us a nice segue into what are the specific services provided by a pregnancy care center?
The majority of pregnancy care centers, and again, I'm speaking on behalf of Pregnancy Care Canada, and so we have 82 affiliated centers, and we have a shared agreement on standards, what we do, how we do it. And so when I speak, I'm speaking about the centers that are part of our network. And so I suspect every center would provide these basic services. I'll just go through them. So pregnancy tests, accurate information about all three pregnancy options: abortion, adoption, parenting, prenatal and parenting education courses, maternity and baby clothes and supplies is available, diapers, that type of thing. Education on healthy relationships, pregnancy-related grief support. So that might be a loss due to a miscarriage or a loss due to an abortion, male mentorship, and then referrals to community resources, because pregnancy care centers are a part of the community safety net. They're not standalone. And so these local centers work very much hand in hand with other community support groups, with churches, with like social services groups. And so they definitely help clients get connected with the help that's already available in their community as well.
So I think that's really interesting that the groups are part of the social safety net. And I think it's really interesting that there are aspects of the social safety net that are not necessarily government provided. So it gives a greater diversity of to the social safety net and spreads it further. Who are the demographics? Like, who seeks you out? Who comes through the door of a pregnancy care center?
And that sometimes surprises people. And we collect data. We have statistics on clients seeking help. And so often people imagine the young teenager, and that definitely is one of the demographics. But the majority of clients are in their 20s. That's the biggest demographic. We also have people that are in their 30s or older. So it may be an unexpected pregnancy, or it may be related to a prior unexpected pregnancy or an adoption process. So the demographic, it can be, depending on the geographical location. If it's near a university or a college setting, it might be that college age student, or in a smaller town, it may be a different group altogether. But it's not just one group. I think that's what I'm trying to say. The demographic is broad, and the centers are flexible to respond and meet people where they're at and support them in a way that they are seeking support. There is no expectation that people receive any specific information or abide by any specific, expectation of what will be discussed or delivered.
So when someone comes to you into one of your centers, is it a one-time interaction, or is there more of a relational long-term, or does it depend? And maybe you could tell us a little bit about that.
Excuse me. Yeah, again, it's client driven. So we really believe in this model of respecting the individual, serving them, meeting them in their need and with what they are asking for. So we want them to feel like they are in control, that it is a permission-based model. Most clients, however, though, are cared for over months, but even years. And we have beautiful stories of individuals. I can think of this one young woman. She had an unexpected pregnancy in high school. So she had to leave her high school education for a time. And she received help and support from the center through the crisis of that period of time, but also afterwards as she got her her high school education. So she completed that, and the people in the center and the community surrounding the center helped support her. They helped her find an apartment. They helped her get set up with all of the logistics of that. And she also received parenting support from the pregnancy center. And she's gone on to do post-secondary education. And still, that community that was established, that walked with her during her unexpected pregnancy, they were there for her long after the birth of the child. It was not just up until that point and then we're gone. There was ongoing support and help. And I believe she still is connected with the center today and actually has done some volunteer work for them.
Okay, that actually leads to my next question. So what are the roles played by volunteers or community members? And I assume you also have donors and want donors within your organization?
Yeah, so the volunteer roles, they're varied. So it may be that volunteers are trained to be a support worker. So the individual that might sit down with someone, meet them, talk about their needs and challenges, or it may be someone who's helping in the clothing room and receiving gently used supplies and organizing them. Could be a volunteer might help with fundraising. In our local community, we've had a golf tournament, or many have baby bottle drives. Volunteers serve on the board. And so another thing that we had in our local community is we had life skills classes. So there was a volunteer who loved to cook. So she did cooking classes for some of the clients. And there are many ways, and each center is a little bit different, and how they respond, what needs they're responding to in their local community. But there really are a lot of different ways that volunteers can serve and support. And you mentioned about the donors too. So yeah, the donors are very important, and not everyone helps in the same way. So some people are able to help through prayer support, and we are a Christian organization and we believe in the power of prayer. And we believe that's important in helping us do our work. So volunteers can support in that way. Donors can support financially. And those funds are used directly to impact the vulnerable women, children, families the centers are serving. And so the financial support of local pregnancy care centers is crucial to ensure that the services that are there for vulnerable women and families continue on. And so I encourage people, if you have a heart for this type of work, do rally around your local pregnancy care center. We, as an umbrella organization, 85% of the funds that we receive are used directly for charitable programming to support the efforts in communities and in the local centers.
So actually, let's just dwell on that for a moment. So you have a lot of volunteers. Do you have paid staff as well at the pregnancy care centers?
Yeah, so that's a good point, and centers have different models. Some centers have more professional staff, and they have more paid staff. So They might have social workers or professional counselors that are paid, but definitely every center has at least one paid staff, the executive director, but many have more paid staff. And so that is a model that's required even to be part of our organization. There has to be paid staff.
So, and then also Pregnancy Care Canada provides the standards. What kind of standards do you give to the pregnancy care centers that are associated with you?
We are an affiliation, and so the 82 affiliated centers agree to standards of care, ethics of client support and counseling, the commitment of care. So we try to emphasize that shared agreement. We are also in the process of rolling out an accreditation process that will be much more robust and involved. And I'm excited about that because it'll help centers. You know, we are in an area where there's a lot of scrutiny. So what might be acceptable in one social charitable sector may not work for us. So we have to actually go above the expectations and the excellence required. And I'm excited that the centers within our network are doing that. They're realizing more and more that this is an important part of how we help the public trust that we are who we say we are, and we're doing what we say we do.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point to dwell on a little bit, because there's been criticism from politicians that, and in the current social climate, that pregnancy care centers are somehow perpetuating a fraud on women, and that your charitable status should be revoked. So I just was wondering if you could speak a little bit about that and why it's important that this area retains its charitable status and is able to do the work that it's doing.
Right. So in December, there was the mandate letter released by the Prime Minister's office to the Minister of Finance, and charging her with to change the Income Tax Act so that, and I'll just read the actual language here, that anti-abortion organizations that provide dishonest counseling to pregnant women about their rights and options are ineligible for charitable status. So for one, Pregnancy Care Canada agrees that dishonest counseling is not okay, regardless of what type of service is being provided. And we care greatly about integrity, accuracy, and those matters. But the thing with this mandate is that it's very vague. What do they consider dishonest counseling? How are they going to determine that? And so that has made it feel that we don't really know how this will be applied. And so we are concerned that there is this potential that our charitable tax status could be revoked. And that sadly, and this is the part that really is upsetting, is the very women they're trying to protect and empower, they will harm, because vulnerable women won't have access to the support that is currently provided if suddenly pregnancy care centers have their charitable status removed. Now, I do believe we will continue to do the work, but it will be harder, and there will be challenges that are unnecessary, and there will be a loss of service and help that is really needed and legitimate. So, and I also believe that, you know, if there's a sweeping generalization on these issues that might affect our charitable status, it will, if it's based on a government's ideology, you know, who's next? Who's next to lose their charitable status? So this is a concerning issue across the board for charities. And I think every charity should be aware of this and concerned.
Yeah, I think it's creating or stating that there's a problem without necessarily having the evidence. So as far as you know, none of your pregnancy care centers that are affiliated with you have had a visit from CRA?
No, I mean, in the past, as with any charity, there are audits. So there are centers who've had CRA audits and they've all passed. No one's ever had their charitable status revoked. They've all done very well, minor corrections. And again, the Canadian charitable system already has a robust process to ensure that charities are functioning at a certain level of excellence and integrity. And so we don't feel that there's a need to change this or amend it or do something different.
Yeah, and I think it's really important that we recognize the charitable sector has a huge role to play in Canadian society and really makes a big difference in many, many people's lives. So I just want to say thank you so much for joining us today and telling us about the great work that you do. And for those of you listening, let us know what you think in the comments below. And thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you, Nicole.